What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, October 26, 2018. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. There's obviously a lot going on in the world today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we've already got a caller waiting on the line, so let's just take that phone call. Dave in Missouri, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Dude, this seems so much like a CIA bogus setup. I mean,
or FBI.
How many times?
Could be FBI.
How many times can we be fooled? How many times are we going to play the fool for this? Okay, so the Dems were down. Hillary and Obama, it's time for military tribunals. Who can't disagree with that? Only the leftists. And then, okay, you mail a pipe bomb in an envelope? Give me a break. This thing, and if you look at the picture that they're showing on the TV, it's clearly a composite. Check out the hairline. It's the most farcical joke. But they know people are stupid. That's the problem, Mike.
They're hoping people are stupid. There's a big difference there because
they know it.
No, going on out and looking at the websites that are covering this story, read the public comments. Nobody is buying this stuff at all. And the polls are shifting red right now. So people did twig onto this thing. It was a desperate trick by the Democrats, and people are very angry. They don't like being treated this way.
Well, it's a joke, man. And the thing is, it doesn't stop. But, I want to come back to who finances this. I want to come back to our responsibility for being part of this joke, because we carried money to finance political interests. Now, I'm going to stay out of my main conversation. You know where I want to go, Mike, don't you?
Yeah, I know where you want to go, and I don't want to go there because I really want to focus on the immediate story here. So, Dave, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go.
Hey.
Yep. What?
Shit. Well, how's Claire? I mean, I wanted to talk to you for a second. How's Claire doing? Amy sends her love.
Yeah, she is doing much better, and of course, she's going to be with us in hour number 3 of the show today.
Well, I mean, I can't wait, except I'm going to be at work, and I can't listen. Listen, I do love you, but, there are those of us who have sacrificed our life, our credibility, our wealth, to try to educate people that you've got to buy locally owned. You've got to buy made in America. You can't support these traders who have sold your future out for, the profits of really just a tiny few at the expense of your children, your hometowns, your working family.
Dave, I got something that's going to make you feel better. I've got something that's going to make you feel better.
Okay.
One of the crimes that this bomb suspect was arrested for was shoplifting from Walmart. So...
hey, this is a patsy. You know that.
He is.
This is Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, it's a setup here. Anyway, Dave,
a real person?
Let me get into this. I got a bunch of stuff I got to lay on out here. So thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. Okay, so obviously the top story on all the corporate media today are bombs, and there are bombs or something that's supposed to look like a bomb. And apparently 4 more packages have shown up. One addressed to New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, one addressed to the former director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. Out in California, a package for Senator Harris, and one for billionaire Tom Steyer. And at the rate they're going, they're going to bring back the hashtag #MeToo. Hashtag me too. I got a suspicious package. Oh, me too. I got a suspicious package. Oh, I got one too. And you're going to have some loser off to the side here saying, I didn't get a suspicious package. I do so want to be a liberal victim snowflake here. Please, I need a suspicious package here. So anyway, and the fake news is still out there blaming Trump's violent rhetoric for all the bombs, even though we know it's the Democrats who've actually called for violence. And there have been 613 incidents of violence by liberals against conservatives. I mean, real violence, Antifa, that kind of situation that the media generally glosses over. So far, we're looking at 14 envelopes that ultimately turned out to be harmless duds. Over at MSNBC, believe it or not, Chuck Todd was out there saying that the bomb scare could be a Russian operation. I mean, that's the shark right there. Well, Chuck Todd's got egg all over his face because they have arrested a suspect, and he's a 56-year-old man named Cesar Sayoc. He goes by a bunch of different names. He claims to be Native American, and he claims to be part of the Seminole tribe. The Seminole tribe are saying they have no record of him being in the tribe, so we've got another Elizabeth Warren situation going on here. So basically, he's a resident of Florida, and you probably noticed that the graphic, the visual that's been all over the air today is this large white van. Oh, this is the suspect's van, and oh, the windows are all covered with all these pro-Trump and anti-Hillary and these right-wing propaganda stuff. There's only one small problem with that. In Florida, it is against the law to have that kind of stickers on your back and side windows. That van would have been pulled over by a traffic cop every quarter of a mile for having those stickers on the window. It's also very suspicious. The stickers are all bright. The colors are saturated. They're not showing any effects of having faded, even though it's being claimed that he's been driving this van with these stickers since April. So this feels like another phony prop out there. And let's be very honest. This is Florida, heavily Democratic. If you have a car with a Trump sticker on it, it gets vandalized. Not on this van. Not on this van. And the FBI and the corporate media are finally starting to hem and haw about how, well, these bombs are rudimentary and they could have been functional. They really could have been functional, but they're actually duds. Yeah, they could have been functional if you actually put in real explosives and a battery and a blasting cap and a clock that actually has an alarm function. This thing is a joke here. Now, the story is that they found this guy using DNA evidence. And boy, oh boy, was that quick. And the question I have is, how did they identify the suspect's DNA as opposed to people at the post office who handled the package? How did they narrow it down? See, here's the thing. When you blend DNA samples, there's no way to separate them out again. You're going to get a result that has DNA markers from two people. Now, the media is making a big deal over the fact that this guy is registered as a Republican, but somebody else found an older registration where he was registered as a Democrat. Now, my question for this is, why would he even bother registering with a political party? He's a convicted felon. He's got a grand theft auto conviction on his record. That's a felony. And in Florida, a convicted felon loses their voting privileges for life. So this guy has fake written all over him. He's been through a bankruptcy. He's perfect for recruitment. He's perfect to be recruited and turned into an asset by an intelligence agency. And somebody pointed out, interestingly enough, that what they're now calling the MAGA bomber, even though he's supposedly a Republican and he's pro-Trump and he's all this other stuff, somebody looked at his Twitter account and discovered he only follows left-wing people. Of the 32 people Sayoc follows on Twitter, none are Republicans or conservatives. He doesn't even follow Donald Trump. Sayoc follows people like Lena Dunham, Jimmy Kimmel, Barack Obama, Taylor Swift, John Oliver, Ellen DeGeneres, and Seth Meyers. And some of the people who follow SEAC are Democrats with the blue wave emojis in this profile. This reeks of a setup. Now, CBS News is out there actually trying to blame Russian bots for creating the political environment ahead of the pipe bombs. And meanwhile, another candidate for Congress in New Jersey's 11th Congressional District, Assemblyman Jay Weber, Republican, has had a death threat delivered against him and his 7 children. That one didn't make the corporate media. All right, let's take some phone calls because the phone lines are definitely loaded up. So Jim in Chicago, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, real quick, the Democrats have overplayed their hand, and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. They overplayed their hand when it came to Kavanaugh. They overplayed their hand when it came to the caravan in Central America.
Yep.
And now this incident, they have overplayed their hand. And I think a lot of people are going to say, wait a second now, can we really have a party that does these things to be in charge, or at least half the Congress will be Democrat? That's what they're thinking and hoping. And I'm not even quite sure about that. Originally, I did think that the Democrats would take the House, but right now, I don't know if they're going to take it or not.
Well, they're certainly going to try and steal it. They're certainly still pushing for the illegal immigrant vote. Those are the 2 wild cards in trying to predict how the midterms are going to turn out. But the polls are definitely closing in on the Democrats right now, and even NBC News is starting to call this election a purple wave.
Right, I would agree with that. So, Michael, that's it. You have a nice weekend.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Keith in Montana. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
All right, am I on? There we
You're
go.
on the air.
Hey, Mike, I just want to... okay, sounds good. Hey, you posted an article on your site there, and I think Claire did the notes on it there, but it was on the taxpayers held liable after the officers caught on video forcing kids to fight in a child fight club in this detention center.
Yes.
Okay. That isn't just in that area. Florida ran a story on that, the Miami Herald there, where the same fight clubs were encouraging male-on-male rape, homosexual rapes. And, of course, when asked about all this, it was to turn the boys into hardened criminals. And then if you do a search here, and I sent you back an email on this, where it's in New Jersey, El Paso, and it's all being ran by the sheriff's offices to turn these people into hardened criminals, these young boys, so that they become wards of the state and for the privatized prison system.
Yes. Or
and this is how...
Or again, these are individuals who could be recruited for covert operations.
Yeah, that's just it. See, and this is how they keep crime going in this country. And it's like I say, there is no way for a child, if they do get in trouble, to try to find any way to straighten their lives out, because they don't want them straightened out, because the local governments and stuff, they strive off this crime here. And I remember this a couple of years back where I was working with a guy there, and one of the drivers had which I don't care who he was, but I was sitting there at lunch break reading the paper there, and here's his driver's name there that he had just been convicted for DUI, 7th conviction. And I was also doing some security system for the courthouse up there, and I asked the judge about that, and he says he's a cash cow. And I said, what's that mean? He pays his fines. I said, yeah, but I said, you're putting this guy back out on the streets. What if he plows into someone like that and kills their family or whatever like that?
Yeah.
And this is how they do it. This is how they keep local governments going.
Yeah, because they're running out of money and they're pillaging the people. They've got the civil forfeiture. They've got outrageous traffic fines that have little to do with actual traffic safety. And again, it's another indicator of the coming collapse.
Yeah, well, it's another one. A young Indian boy was hitchhiking from St. Ignatius to Ronan, and he was cited for soliciting. And I thought, geez, this sounds like a hooker thing like that. And then I thought, well, if that's illegal, then why don't they take all these movies called The Hitchhiker off?
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, have a good day, okay?
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
The first thing, we shouldn't be calling this guy a bomber. We should be calling him a hoaxer, because all of these hoaxes, and I'm curious to know, what is this actually distracting from? Is this distracting from the caravan? coming, or the invasion force that's coming out from Mexico?
That's
or
definitely
what is
one
this,
of
what
the
is this-
agendas at work, because that migrant caravan has also backflashed onto the Democrats, and they don't want the voters thinking about it, because immigration is a hot button issue with the American voters. So we're going to be talking about that here in just a little bit. But I think it really was an effort to try and counter all the negative publicity from these 613 known physical attacks by liberals against conservatives by saying, oh, look, we have 14 envelopes. We have 14 envelopes. See, we're the victims now. You've got to feel sorry for us. And if you look at anybody who's talking about this circumstance, what do they always say at the end? Get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. This is clearly a political operation.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Absolutely. And the other thing that I'm thinking about, too, that this was a Hail Mary pass to get people to out and vote, but is this also to desensitize people for when actually a real bomb comes through?
Well, it's going to have that effect, whether that's intended or not. And I remember right after 9/11 when everybody was on a hair trigger alert because of the anthrax mailings. And I was working in an office building where the authorities were showing up because somebody had called in and said that there's a pile of anthrax in our little break area. It was actually somebody had dumped some coffee creamer. But after a while, it just sort of burned out. Again, it's important for people to realize these were not real bombs. This is a pure propaganda, public relations stunt, a Hail Mary, desperation on the cusp of madness stunt by the Democrats to basically maintain a chance at the midterms. But it's backfiring. That other caller was right. The Democrats keep overplaying their hands. They overplayed Kavanaugh. That made them look bad. They overplayed the migrant caravan. That made them look bad. Now they've overplayed this. And a lot of people out there are very angry at the obviousness with which they're being propagandized. And angry people don't tend to vote for the party that they suspect is the one hoaxing them.
Sure. I mean, and the other kind of thing that kind of sent me red flags too. I'm in Eastern time. This story was released at 12 o'clock on a Friday. I think this is going to be buried by Monday because they don't want it out there.
I think you may be right. They obviously they realized people weren't buying the reality of the bombs, so now they've ginned up this patsy. Oh, we have an arrest. He's going to go away for 50 years, and by Monday, yes, the story will be gone, and we'll be into some other distraction.
Sure. That's all I have for you, Mr. Mike. I hope you have a great, wonderful day, and give Miss Claire the best.
I certainly will. Thank you very much, and we're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just want to let you know, I just called about a half an hour ago. I called my Congressman, Mark Meadows, here, and I told him, well, I didn't talk to him. I talked to one of his aides or interns, and I told him, I said, you know, you cannot believe stuff like this. You got to start calling these people out. Meadows wanted to have Rosenstein in there to testify, and Rosenstein did it behind closed doors, and, you know, and I told him, no, you should have had him. You should have had him up there for contempt of court, and that means you should have put him in contempt of Congress, and you should have put him in jail, because the FBI, Justice Department, cannot be trusted. And then I see Trump, and I complain. I said, Trump is just showing he's either stupid or he's compromised by going along with this nonsense and saying, well, this might hurt the red wave and praising the FBI and law enforcement and all that. They don't need to be praised. They're probably behind this. And then you got this sheriff, the sheriff of Coward County, or better yet, Sheriff Stand down there, Israel. And I said, don't you think that doesn't smell the high heaven? By then I knew the guy had an arrest record, a mile long.
He did. Mark, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. Don't hang up. I'll come right back to you after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and we're still talking with Mark in North Carolina about this very hastily put together hoax being foisted on the American people. Again, the Democrats are getting desperate. Their entire strategy for survival depends on being able to take control of Congress and shut down all these investigations that have been going on. Mark, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I talked to the congressman's aide there, and I told him, there's no way this is believable. This is not even a good put on. And I said, you cannot trust the FBI. The FBI is probably involved. And I went again over what happened at Cowers County there with Israel. And when those people exited, the four people in SWAT gear or some kind of military gear exited the side door there at the schoolhouse and went into that pickup truck or van, I forget. And they had all their gear with them. And then finally they wind up letting cops go into the building. And then surprise, surprise, it's this guy Cruz, they say, did it. I mean, I said, you cannot keep believing these people. You got to start really investigating and finding out what's going on. Hey, it's the same thing with what happened in Vegas there with the other crook there of the sheriff, Lombardo.
Yep.
They cannot keep, people are not believing this. Maybe a few people that still watch, well, I shouldn't say a few. Unfortunately, a lot of people still get the news from mainstream media or corporate media, as we call them, not from independent media.
Yeah, but less and less every day. They're losing their audience.
Yeah. Yeah. So more and more people are understanding what's going on, and yet they keep it up. And Trump, I hate to say it, but Trump, I really believe he's either an idiot or he's compromised. Okay? He knows what the FBI tried to do to him. He knows what the CIA tried to do to him, the so-called intelligence community. He knows all this, and he keeps praising them, saying, oh, they're doing a great job. And no, they're not doing a great job. They're a bunch of crooks. They want to take away our freedoms. They're not working for the American people. They're working for the New World Order.
Okay,
They're
well,
globalists.
okay. Trump right now is looking at a midterm election less than 2 weeks away. And he knows that if he says anything to question the story that's being put out by the Democrats, they'll savage him. The corporate media will go after him. So he's taking the high road, talking about unity. It's the best thing he could have said. In fact, it's the only thing he could have said. As far as him being compromised, I think that's very obvious. As far as him being an idiot, well, the two are not mutually exclusive. And like I said, he's been a tremendous disappointment. Of course, when I was on his side in 2016, it was mostly about keeping Hillary out of that White House.
Yeah, but I supported him during the and I think you did too, if I remember right, during the primaries too,
Yes.
because I figured he had the best chance of beating her, and he was saying things I really liked. I mean, anti-globalist statements, and including that we wouldn't interfere in other people's business militarily and all that. I really believe. Well, I partly believe. I wanted to believe.
Yeah, we all wanted to believe him here, but the reason I backed him during the primaries was that he did appear to be a genuine outsider. Everybody else in that GOP primary lineup, they were career politicians. They're all compromised. They're all corrupt. And I really did want to see somebody from outside get in. But Trump has been corralled. He's been muzzled. And he is a disappointment, definitely. Okay?
All right, well, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. But Pete, just one other thing. Call your congressman, folks. Call your senators. Tell them you don't believe this garbage. Let's start getting let's start putting these people on notice. Okay, that's pretty much all I want to say, Mike.
Okay, I would add to that. Call your local network affiliate TV stations, call your local newspapers. They all have comment lines, and just call on in and say, I'm not buying any of this. This is all a gigantic hoax to help the Democrats. And let's let them know that we know it's just another phony manufactured story. Okay, Mark, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to start with Frank in London. Frank, I'm probably going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What is on your mind?
Hi, Mike. For once, just for once, I kind of agree with the tactics Trump is using with the forthcoming midterm election. He doesn't want to go in there like an attack dog. You have to be kind of careful what you say so you don't get, public perception wrong and that sort of stuff going on. So I kind of agree with that. The only thing I disagree with, when he comes out making these stupid remarks that this guy is a good guy and that guy's a good, it's an insult to the public's intelligence, right?
Yes.
But, however, you have to be mindful that there is a midterm coming, and the Democrats, they're in real trouble, and he doesn't want to do anything to help them. So for once, I agree with Trump.
Yes.
I feel we're going to see something very, very different after the elections.
Well, again, the wild cards are the election rigging, those electronic machines, and how many illegal immigrants will be allowed to vote. Okay, Frank, stay on the line. We're going to put you on hold, and we'll come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Frank in London, and we're talking about obviously from now until the midterms, both political parties and every candidate, they're totally focused on that. And that's all they're going to be thinking about for the next few days. Let's see, it's about, well, it's a little less than 2 weeks, a little more than 1 week. So, Frank, anything else?
Yeah. Also, I'm fed up with people calling the people coming up from is it Guatemala and Central America and South America a caravan. No, it's not a caravan. That's a horde.
Yes.
That is a horde. That's not a caravan. That's hordes and hordes of invaders.
Yes.
And, and I know what's going to happen. And I'm telling you, if Trump doesn't do anything about this, right, I guarantee you, after the midterms, whether they take back the House or not, he would be a one-term president, definitely, because his popularity apparently is at an all-time high. And this is a time he should press home, and you don't worry about in terms of that invasion. He just cannot allow that, because in terms of the Democrats, he doesn't have to worry about it, because they seem to be doing a pretty good job destroying themselves. So that's okay. They can go ahead with that, but he needs to do something about that, because as much as I can feel sorry for people, those people looks pretty healthy. If as you can see the other day, some of them look quite overweight. So
yes,
this is just a political hit, and he needs to be very, very decisive with what he's going to do. So I hope they have some plan in place, or else I'm telling you, he'll be gone come 2020.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And we have the Democrats are out there openly basically treating all these people as future Democratic voters, which tells us the Democratic Party, and for that matter, the federal government as a whole, they've gone outlaw. They're not playing by the rules. We have all these laws and rules set up. We have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, we've got Title VIII, and they're all being ignored. It's just, get the bodies in, get them registered to vote. Doesn't matter if they're legally entitled to vote. Just get them in there, get them voting Democrat. Remember when Rome fell? It was because they got invaded from outside by the barbarian hordes that swooped down from the north, and they sacked Rome. That's what's going to happen here.
Well, that's exactly what's happening.
Yep. Okay?
Okay, Mike, thanks.
All right. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are now open again. So, all of this stuff about these very obviously phony bombs, it's backflashing on the Democrats. That first caller was right. The Democrats keep overplaying their hands. They keep acting as if they're absolutely convinced that anybody who is not a liberal is an idiot. And they're about to find out, no, actually, some of us are quite intelligent and educated and aware, and we think. So one of the things that this bomb situation may have been to distract from were the hearings that were to take place this week with Trey Gowdy and Bob Goodlatte, but apparently they have been postponed yet again. So we'll see what's going to happen on that. But yeah, at this point, it may have also been intended to distract from the barbarian hordes that are coming up from the south. because that has worked against the Democrats. Immigration is a hot issue for the American voters, and the Democrats are realizing they need to get the American people's minds onto something else. Or the American people are going to go into those voting booths and they're going to say, I want to vote for a closed border. So that may be it. Now, Judicial Watch, along with everything else that they're doing, they're involved in looking at this barbarian horde, and they're saying that there are people inside this so-called migrant caravan that are coming from all over the world. Now, originally it was being presented, oh, these are poor people from Honduras. They're fleeing the terrible conditions in their country. And then it started leaking on out. There were Africans in the group. There were Bangladeshi. There were people from India. And Judicial Watch is saying it's everywhere. People are apparently coming in from all over the world, and Mexico's just letting them come on in and join this caravan. Now, we're being told that Trump is preparing an executive order to ban all Central American migrants, even those seeking asylum, from entering the U.S. via Mexico. And he has the right and the authority to do that, because the way the asylum process is supposed to work is you apply for asylum while you're still in your home country. You don't just step across the border and say, give me the paperwork. It doesn't work that way. You have to go to a U.S. embassy or consulate and say, I wish to apply for asylum in the United States of America. And you fill out the paperwork there, and it is reviewed, and somewhere down the road it is either accepted or rejected. That's the way it is supposed to be working. And apparently a lot of people around Trump are trying to say that you can't really do that. I mean, you can't do any of these things here. That's not true. And I hope that whoever monitors this show for Donald Trump is going to pay attention to this next part, because Title 8, Chapter 12 of the U.S. Code, the section on inadmissible aliens, lays it right on out. Trump has the right to totally shut down the border. Whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may, by proclamation, and for such period as he shall deem necessary, suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem to be appropriate. That is the letter of the law. Trump doesn't need permission from anybody. But recently, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the president's authority, because remember when Donald Trump was banning immigrants from countries that are known to be terrorist havens, and of course it was misnamed by the corporate media as a ban on Muslims. Well, even if it was a ban on Muslims, Trump has the authority to do that. But there was a case brought from here in the state of Hawaii, saying, Trump can't do that. Trump can't do that. And the United States Supreme Court said, oh, yes, he can. He can definitely do that. All right, let's take a couple of phone calls. Laura in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Laura, are you there? Okay, I guess we lost Laura. Let's switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, is this Laura?
Laura? It's Laura.
Okay, Laura, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I was going to give you two immigration facts. One is Dr. Patty Doyle said last night that polio that's going around in the United States, and that's strictly from the Somalis and the Muslims, because they have poor hygiene, poor bathroom hygiene. The polio virus lives in the intestine. And she said, if your kids are going to school with these Somalis or Muslims, get them out for their health's sake. Because these people do not have good bathroom hygiene. And it is polio. They're trying to say it's polio light, or giving it some other name. It's actual polio, she said.
Okay.
So you got to remember that. And number two fact, according to ChristianMediaNetwork.com, on their newscast, they said that last year in California, the number of illegal alien anchor baby births rivaled that of the total births of 14 of our states.
Yes. And in a lot of cases, the taxpayers had to pick up the cost of the maternity services. I mean, it's completely out of control system. It's completely out of control system.
I just want people to think about that. And I think it should be gotten out about this polio, this actual polio.
Well, I've been talking about that for a while, not so much in context of the refugees and immigrants, although there's no question they are reintroducing diseases to this country that were previously eradicated. But there may be a link to the polio vaccine because they've had problems with that before, and that may explain why they're trying to say, don't call it polio, call it this, whatever it is they're calling it, AFD or something like that, something myelitis.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I always hear these pundits on TV, and they always bring up, like, the different groups of people, and one they keep bringing up are, like, educated white women. And what does that mean? I mean, does that mean they went to college and got indoctrinated? I mean, because most of the educated people that are so-called educated people, they don't think for themselves. They're indoctrinated. Look at these people that take women's studies and these radical feminists. They don't think. They're just indoctrinated drones. And when I hear them bring it up, I always kind of snicker. And what made me call is I heard you said, like, think. And that's what brought it into my mind, is because, you know, a lot of these people that are so-called educated, they go to these universities and they're not taught to think for themselves. They're told to be parrots, and they're told to who the bad guys are. They are so indoctrinated. It's really sad that the education system in this country has gotten so radicalized and polluted by socialist, communist Marxism. And when I heard this lady talking about the bad things about immigration, yeah, you have to understand that the people that want immigration want this bad stuff. They're trying to destroy this country and using immigrants as their shock troops. They want people to come in this country with low IQs. They want people to come in bringing diseases. They want them bringing crime. These people that are behind flooding our country with immigrants want this country destroyed. And you have to understand that principle. You have to get that first in order to understand what you're dealing with here. This is the face of evil. These people hate America and what it stands for, and you have to understand that. They think all day, every day, they think, how can I destroy this constitutional republic today? And if they have polio, more the better for them. They want that. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm passionate about it, but it really bothers me. And I heard a guy the other day talking about how you really can't bring people with low IQs into a civilized society because they're going to bring their third world country problems with their low IQs. They're just not developed. Their minds don't think right for a civilized, first world
well, I
country.
don't think
they don't bring that with them.
I don't think it's so much an issue of IQ as it's a question of the culture that they've spent their entire life in. And if it's a culture of violence and conflict, that's what they're going to bring with them. The liberals are absolutely convinced that they can take all these gangbangers from Central and South America and that they'll magically transform into very nice people the instant they step across the border. And that has certainly not been our experience.
Well, I was in Somalia. She brought up Somalia. I was in Somalia 30 years ago, and it was a nightmare then. And that's before all the wars and the warlords and anything else. And the people there, you're bringing them into this country. You're settling them in Maine and Minnesota, and there's going to be nothing but problems from those people for 100,000 years. They have a totally different religion. They have very low IQs. They're just going to become more and more in their tribal group, and they're going to be nothing but trouble. And I do think IQ is something that should be looked at as far as immigration. I mean, if you look at the people that come here and assimilate well, they're the Asians, they're the Europeans, and those people generally have higher IQ levels. And then you look at the people who come here and don't assimilate well and create crimes. they usually do come from places where the average IQ is below 85. And I'm sorry, it's an unpopular thing and it's a politically incorrect thing to bring up. But usually, statistically, it will follow that
no,
fact.
I understand that different ethnic groups do have different average IQs, and it's a political hot button. And I got caught up in that controversy many years ago when I was still a member of Mensa, because we were under attack as an organization by the liberals back then, saying that everybody's IQ should be assumed to be equal, and to have an organization where you have to take an IQ test to join, that's elitist and that's exclusionary. And so even all the way back then, we were dealing with this nonsense.
Well, it's a shame because people that have high IQ, and I'm not one that has that. I'm not Mensa, but I respect people that are very smart because I understand that their intelligence usually brings prosperity to the people around them, and that and hard work you're unstoppable when you combine a real high intelligence with a high level of energy. I've seen that in a lot of people I've worked with and said, wow, and I've watched them really go places. But anyway, I'd like to leave it at that and wish you a happy Friday and a good weekend to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. And we're coming up on another commercial break here. Now, the director of the FBI has just issued a statement saying that even though the devices that were in those envelopes sent to prominent Democrats may look like poorly made TV props, they weren't. They're not hoax devices. They're very real. Take my word for it. I mean, we're at the FBI. We would never lie to you. And if you believe that one, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you on that, which I guess obviously the FBI is listening to my show or reading my website. So greetings to the FBI. Nice that you're checking in on us here. And yes, they are hoaxes. Apparently, Guatemalan authorities have rescued a group of miners from, and that's children, not gold miners, silver miners, but underage children, from human smugglers in this caravan. And apparently the people who were smuggling them have now been arrested. The children have been taken into custody and are being provided with food, water, and medical attention. So there's a lot of bad things going on with this caravan. And yet the Democrats are just out there saying, yes, they should just be allowed to come across the border without restriction here. But if you import the third world into your country, you're going to have third world problems. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about the barbarian hordes approaching our country from the south here. And, of course, the Democrats are already criticizing Donald Trump for this, we expect almost immediately, an executive order shutting down the border, which Donald Trump has the authority to do under Title VIII. And so you've got Democrats like Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland was on CNN today saying, well, no, we should be helping them into the United States here. We should be bringing in all these rapists and muggers and child traffickers and contagious people and just expedite the process, and get them voter registration cards. So that's what it's really all about. And this whole idea of open borders, it's never existed before in history. Since humans began to evolve into social groups, there's always been a border. The outside edge of the village, the outside edge of the kingdom, the outside edge of the empire, and they were guarded for very good reason. This open borders idea is a liberal fantasy, and look at how much trouble it's caused in Europe. Look at how much trouble it's getting ready to cause here. So I understand Latin America has got a lot of problems, but you know something? So does this country. We can't stand up and claim that we're somehow immune from all of the corruption and crime and that's going on. We've got massive homelessness in this country, hunger. We have no business taking in people from other countries until we take care of our own. So the caravan is on its way. And again, if you import the third world into your country, you import third world problems with it. Okay. Let's see. Somebody wrote on in to say that the migrants could actually apply for asylum in the United States from any country outside of the United States, which means they could apply for amnesty, or rather asylum, inside Mexico. But there's like 15,000 of them right now. The Democrats are desperate. And I'll tell you this, if that barbarian horde does break through the fence, there are going to be buses waiting for them. There are going to be buses waiting to take these people up to the just slightly red voting districts to turn them blue. And while they're being driven up there, they're going to be registered to vote. Because nobody checks citizenship status for voting anymore since 2016. All right, so let's turn over to the conflict zones. There's a lot going on over there. Over in Syria, the Russians are making a big stink over the fact that 13 unmanned aerial vehicles attacked Russia's Hmeimim air base in Syria. And they were being controlled by a U.S. Poseidon 8 reconnaissance plane. Now, this apparently happened quite a while ago, but Russia basically brought this up at a plenary session of the Beijing Xinjiang Forum just a couple of days ago. Yesterday, in fact. All right, we're going to take a break for station identification. More about this when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about how Russia is making a big stink over an incident that happened earlier this year, where apparently 13 unmanned aerial vehicles attacked Russia's Hmeimim air base in Syria. Now, Russian Deputy Defense Minister Colonel General Alexander Fomin was speaking at this plenary session of the Beijing Xinjiang Forum on Security yesterday, and basically said that all of these UAVs were being controlled by a United States Poseidon 8 reconnaissance plane, which means that in addition to reconnaissance, it's got a drone control station there, maybe more than one. But Russia is saying that these 13 UAVs moved according to common combat battle deployment. They think they were operated by a single crew. In any event, 7 of the UAVs were downed, and the remaining 6 were basically electronically hijacked and taken control of. But this is a various situation when you have U.S. military forces directly engaging with Russian forces. And I can understand why Russia wants to make this public, because it reminds us who the aggressor is in all of this. Story coming on out of Sputnik News, the neocons are pulling Trump strings to get rid of Reagan's intermediate range nuclear force treaty. And this is coming out of Paul Craig Roberts, basically responding to Trump's intention to quit this treaty. And the ramifications are it's going to kick off a whole new arms race. Guess who gets to pay for all of that? It leads to more nuclear proliferation. It increases the possibility there'll be an accident. So apparently a top Russian official, chairman of the Defense Committee of the State Duma, Vladimir Shamanov, is basically saying there'll be no chance the INF will be renegotiated, because that's where Trump is coming from. The old deal was bad. I'm pulling out. I want a new deal, which will supposedly include a lot of other countries that never signed the original INF, which was basically between the U.S. And the Soviet Union. So it's going to be another disaster. Trump's going to pull out of a treaty. There's going to be no replacement. What's Trump going to do? Hit Russia with more sanctions? Meanwhile, Greece is raising a complaint, if you will. Apparently, surveillance unmanned aerial vehicles from Turkey are flying over the Greek Navy in the Mediterranean region, including parts of the continental shelf of Greece, which Greece considers to be their sovereign territory. So I don't know what Turkey is thinking about, But apparently Turkey is escalating in the eastern Mediterranean. And Greece is dealing with this diplomatic dilemma because Turkey sent a seismic vessel to the eastern Mediterranean to allegedly explore the existence of natural gas deposits. And after the incident, Turkey sent 3 frigates and 2 patrol ships to protect the movements of their seismographic ship. Now, the Greek Navy had sent a radio alert. You are in our territory. But Turkey seems to be pushing tensions by sending this vessel to operate in what is clearly Greek territorial waters. Down in Israel, Israel is out there bombing Gaza again. 8 Hamas targets were struck. There was another rocket supposedly launched from Gaza that Iron Dome failed to intercept, and it hit a dirt patch. We've seen this pattern repeating over and over and over again. Israel's trying to save face by saying, well, Iron Dome wasn't really designed to deal with these little tiny rockets that are coming out of Gaza. And they're actually correct, because these rockets coming out of Gaza, they're not really guided, and they're not particularly stable. And they do have a tendency to corkscrew through the air, which means a predictable ballistic path is impossible to calculate. Apparently over in Hebron, at the Nada Basic School for Boys, the Army, for some reason, just invaded the school, surrounded the school, and fired gas bombs directly into its campus. And the children were suffering tear gas inhalation. No explanation for why they did it, but that's what they did here. French President Macron is pushing Donald Trump to reveal his Middle East peace plan. And he's saying if he doesn't do it after the upcoming midterm elections, that Paris has their own plan ready to move forward. This is coming from the Foreign Ministry's political director, Alain Ushpiz. Now, so far, we don't know a whole heck of a lot about what Trump has inside this deal of the century, as he likes to call it, other than that it involves the Palestinians surrendering their right of return, which I don't think they're ever going to do. Their homes were stolen from them. They want them back. The United Nations promised they could have them back. Israel promised they could have them back. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Meanwhile, Deputy Foreign Minister Tzipi Horovali, in an interview with Arutz Shiva, basically says that we've made it clear to the United States we will not uproot the settlements. Now, apparently, Donald Trump has been saying that maybe something that Israel could do toward peace is to start pulling back on all these illegal settlements in the West Bank. And the settlements are illegal. They're illegal under international law. But Israel's attitude is, we're above the law, and we're not giving it back. We're not giving 1 inch of our land to the Arabs who used to live here. Okay, we're going to take a phone call. Art off the grid, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Yeah, I could go. I could get into the whole caravan thing, but I want to focus on this bomb thing, which is obvious. This whole bomb thing is designed to be a distraction away from the caravan. But what I find interesting about this is we now have CNN, MSNBC, and all of these others. It appears that they're trying to put the blame on Trump.
Yes.
As if like this, if you want to believe this guy down in Florida is behind all of this, as if Trump somehow inspired him to do this. And I'm sorry, but that van, that is a ploy, that is a fraud, that is a fake, that is a set up if ever was. What I find really interesting is we have people like Mayor Bill de Blasio, quote, all public officials of all partisan affiliation don't encourage violence, don't encourage hatred, don't encourage attacks on media. and calling, we need to tone this rhetoric down. And wait a minute, wasn't it Maxine Waters?
Yes.
Kat Carlson and others
Loretta
calling
Lynch,
for
Eric Holder, they were all doing that. Get in the face of the conservatives. Just
and it all
confront them in
began with
public.
Barack Obama back there in the campaign.
And you've got
Now
Antifa
they
is
wanna
out there,
tone down the rhetoric.
and you have Antifa is out there committing acts of violence, and the corporate media gives them a pass. The bias is very obvious here. 613 documented cases of violence by the left against the right. The media barely shrugs. 12 envelopes with phony bombs inside there. Sorry, FBI. And it's the big story. There's still, it's all that's running on Fox News right now.
Yeah, but it's all the Republicans' fault. And don't get me wrong, I am not a Trump fan. I can give you 12 excuses why Trump is a piece of garbage in my view. But at the same time, I'm not going to blame him for what's going on, because when you have, like we pointed out, when you have people like Maxine Waters and all of these others calling, get in their face, going all the way back to Barack Obama during the campaign, when I need you to get in their faces, and Kat Carlson, don't give them a moment of rest, and all of this kind of garbage. When you call on people to become aggressive and violent, don't be surprised when the aggression and the violence is turned towards you.
Absolutely. And it's very obvious that they're trying to, turn this around and project onto the GOP their own behavior. And it's so heavy-handed and obvious, I can't imagine anybody falling for it. And all of a sudden saying, "Oh, the Democrats are the victims and the Republicans are the violent bad people." We've had too many of these stories of violence against conservatives. That's not going to go away. They're not just going to forget that.
No, they're not. And this whole caravan thing, just to touch on this real quick, I heard reports, I don't know exactly how much of this is true, but I've heard reports that there have been 800 or so National Guard authorized to be down there. Do they honestly think, looking at the way that this so-called caravan just brutally pushed their way through the Mexican police, do they honestly think 800 U.S. soldiers with orders to not engage are going to stop a horde of as much as possibly 14,000 or more crazed, paid, and bought South Americans?
Well, let's back up here a second. Let's back up here a second. It is the National Guard that Mattis ordered to be unarmed and not to interact with the migrants. I don't know about the 800 Army, what their specific orders are. But again, this is a watershed moment for Donald Trump. If those barbarian hordes get through the fence, it will be seen as a failure of his promise to secure our borders, and it will make him a one-term president. And maybe he's not really serious about running in 2020, and he really couldn't care. But Americans are counting on him to secure that border. And what the Democrats are hoping is that they're going to get through that fence before the midterms, because then they can campaign on that. Because immigration is a big issue for the American voters. And if they can portray Trump as having failed to secure our borders, that could definitely have an effect on the midterm elections.
Well, I find it hard to believe, if they have all those National Guard down there who are told not to engage, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to send 800 Army with orders to engage. That doesn't make much sense right there, because you're going to have 800 armed Army engaging while however many National Guard are just kind of standing there twiddling their thumbs. That doesn't, being ex-military myself, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, Mike.
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. And they should be arming those National Guardsmen right now and changing their orders. And even so, it's nowhere near enough. 2,000 is not going to be enough. They should have 20,000 armed military on that border. And the longer Trump waits, the worse it's going to look.
Yep, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you something. Have you heard? I heard something about this the other day. I don't, or earlier in the week. I don't remember if it was on your broadcast or on with John Statmiller. There was a lady called in, had mentioned something about some of the state militias. Have you heard anything about that? Because
there was a lady who called on in and said something called the constitutional state militias had been called up and were heading south. And I said, if true, it strikes me as a really bad idea because now you're talking in a situation that could get clearly out of control. And while I want that border closed and those migrants turned back, we can't afford to have any of them seriously hurt or killed again because the Democrats will seize on that. So tear gas, LRADs, the area denial system, things like that. To basically push them back.
There's plenty of non-lethal tactics can be used. I was just wondering because I've not been able to verify any of the constitutional militia rumor, and as far as I'm concerned, right now it's a rumor until we hear of something more definite. Anyway, thanks, Mike, and appreciate everything you do.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the international news. Up in Germany, Israel has been putting a lot of pressure on the German government to outlaw the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And the head of the Bundestag has announced that Germany will oppose BDS, but they refuse to outlaw it. And basically going on back to their own laws regarding freedom of speech and protest, which is really what it comes on down to. And of course, Israel's going back to the old canard that BDS is just anti-Semitism and therefore it's perfectly justified in shutting it down. No, it isn't. BDS is about Israel's behavior. And claiming that all criticism of Israel is based on anti-Semitism is like saying that the only reason people ever complained about the Nazis is they hate the German people. I mean, that is how absurd it is on the face of it here. Okay, the Forward is reporting that a hugely popular pro-Israel speaker and writer, Hen Mazig, may have worked as an Israeli secret agent on college campuses, and in so doing may have violated U.S. espionage laws. So here a spy, there a spy, everywhere a spy. Remember in the weeks before 9/11? The FBI uncovered the largest foreign spy ring ever caught operating inside the United States of America. Hundreds of people were working for Israel. And according to a U.S. official quoted in Carl Cameron's 4-part story on 9/11, some of those known Israeli agents, there was evidence linking them to 9/11. But what that evidence was classified by the U.S. government. Okay, getting onto the military here. The Heritage Foundation is out there with a new report saying that the U.S. Navy needs more ships. They need a larger fleet. And so, yeah, let's just start building more ships here. They want to see a 12% increase over the Navy's current 30-year shipbuilding plan. And it's only going to cost another $4 to $6 billion annually to get to 400 ships by 2039. Okay. That may not be practical. Apparently up in Canada, there's a defense company who has agreed to pay $3.5 million to settle allegations that it knowingly sold defective helicopter landing systems for U.S. Navy warships. Now, based in Ontario, Indel Technologies produced what's called the RAST system, which is attached to the flight deck of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers since the 1970s. And if the sea is rough and the weather is bad, rather than try and have the pilot land the helicopter, somebody goes on up and puts this hook on the corresponding hook on the other side of the helicopter. The pilot pulls up on the collective to keep a strain, and the helicopter is simply winched down onto this trolley, and then the trolley takes it into the ship's hangar. And it's required to have a specific type of steel that offers strength, corrosion protection, and ruggedness. And apparently somebody at this company said, well, we can save a little bit of money going with a cheaper steel. And they got caught doing it. They probably made a lot more in profits than they're having to pay back. But again, somebody needs, if we're going to have a military industrial complex, it's got to be cleaned up. It's totally out of control. And we're coming up here on yet another commercial break. So when we come on back, we're going to be talking about our domestic political situation. There's a lot of interesting things going on. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And turning to our domestic politics, even NBC is admitting that the so-called blue wave appears to be turning purple. Now, as you know, early voting has started in 25 states. The turnout is overwhelmingly Republican. And I think it's significant. Apparently, down in Florida, there's a very tight race there that got even tighter. The Republican candidates' poll numbers are going up. The Democrats are coming down. And the Democrats did it to themselves. They didn't actually have any ideas for the American people. The Democrats made themselves into the party of the men who want to use the ladies' room and foreigners who just want to walk across the border and enjoy the country that we, the American people, built. And that's a hard sell right now. Now, there's a story that's coming on out from governmentslaves.info, and this goes back to the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation. And apparently NBC News knowingly withheld crucial information that undermined the allegations by Swetnick, the Avenatti client who accused Kavanaugh of spiking punch bowls at house parties so he and his buddies could engage in serial rapes. And NBC had this exculpatory information all the way back on September 30th. They're now admitting that they did have it. And NBC didn't want you to know. Because after all, NBC's News is not in the business of telling you things. They're in the business of telling you what to think. That's their job. Just sit there and we'll tell you what to think, and all will be well. Okay, looking at the economic news here, was a bad day on the stock market. They did not get their traditional Friday happy ending. A lot of people thought after yesterday's bump up that the declines were over, but the Dow ended 296 down, the S&P down 46, NASDAQ down 151. So I can imagine the investors are getting a little bit nervous. At one point, the Dow was down over 500. So Deutsche Bank shares are dropping under $10 a share. They've had all kinds of problems and scandals here. Gold is gaining. Apparently it gained nearly 1% as the global stock markets continue to fall. Over at Kitco News, they're basically talking about a suggestion coming out of the New York-based International FC Stone saying that gold should replace U.S. Treasuries as the ultimate risk-off asset. Now, back when Bretton Woods was still in effect, U.S. Treasuries were considered as good as gold because they were backed by gold. But Richard Nixon ended that. And now we know there is a Treasury bubble. They printed up more Treasury bonds than can ever be redeemed. And so we're starting to see these experts saying maybe the Treasury isn't such a rock-solid secure investment anymore. maybe it's time to start thinking about gold. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Al in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hope you're doing well. I hate to backtrack, but I was just banned again from CBC. They were talking about, this pipe bomb thing, and someone posted something about how pristine the van looks and all that jazz. And so I was commenting on it. Yeah, that's how false flags work. These things end up looking like props. They're all new. And there was a few people that were basically not buying it and whatnot. And then, I went to post something else and I hit, enter and do, you have to log in to post a comment.
Yes.
So, you know what, Mike? You said earlier something about, call your this person and that person, your MP or your congressman or, it depends on what country you're in. Or, post on social media or on news websites. Yeah, you know what, Mike? If they don't like what you have to say, they'll just ban you, right?
Yep.
So, what's
the
point?
goal here is to shatter their confidence. The only reason the Democrats keep doing these things over and over again is they think they're getting away with it. They think people aren't seeing it. And if we make a huge noise, we can shake their confidence. And that would be a major victory for our side, where they're going to be sitting there saying, wow, we can't do these kind of things anymore, because they're just not believing it. Right now, apparently, they're still convinced that the vast majority of people are believing this. But going on back to that statement just made by the director of the FBI that, yes, the bombs do look like TV props, but trust us, they're real. Yeah, they're starting to realize that they're not able to keep these lies going any longer. Anyway, Al, got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and I'm looking at the Fox News feed, and they're citing a poll saying that roughly 2/3 of the voters say that Donald Trump himself is a major factor in the upcoming midterms, and they're linking it to this migrant caravan, or as I like to call them, the barbarian horde. And so this reinforces what I've said. If Trump fails to stop these people at the border, he'll lose the midterms, because they're inextricably linked. All righty, getting on back to the economic news here. Apparently out in California, the middle class is not just in decline, they're disappearing. The ultra rich are very rich up there in Silicon Valley, and underneath them you have basically these workers, many of whom have jobs and still are living in their cars or having to sleep in shelters. It's like a modern feudal system of robber barons and the poor. And there's a video that we linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. It's titled "Shocking Video Shows the Third World Conditions in Los Angeles, Homeless Everywhere." And what makes this video interesting is it starts off with some clips by Democratic candidates saying that things are wonderful in California because of the progressive policies that we are implementing. California is doing great, not despite progressivism, but because of it. And then they, of course, cut to this car driving around Los Angeles, looking at street after street after street after street filled with tents and make-do shelters. And yeah, the conditions we're seeing there are in fact linked to the progressive policies, because if you look at every democratically controlled city across the United States, they are all in trouble. The people are being taxed into poverty. The infrastructure is basically crumbling. The rich are getting very rich, and everybody else is kind of left behind. So, all right, over in Asia, there is a popular restaurant chain called Haidilao International, and they have just partnered with Japan's Panasonic Corporation to open what they say will be the world's first restaurant with a fully automated staff. Okay, robots will take the orders, they'll actually prepare and deliver the meals to the tables. Now, for the tech geeks in us, we're going to say, wow, that's pretty cool. I'd like to see that. But who is going to eat at that restaurant if everybody has gone to robots and nobody has a job? We're seeing that already here in the United States of America. Jobs were offshored. People were put out of work. They can't go to the malls. They can't buy things. Iconic retailers are going out of business, and nobody seems able to open up their eyes and realize the underlying problem. Ordinary Americans are not in a position to trade their labor for decent wages and salaries so that they can power that economy. Prior to the 2008 mortgage-backed security meltdown, consumer spending was 60% of the U.S. economy. Now, of course, the U.S. economy is being shifted and geared for war. We're going to do war. Story out of antiwar.com. Apparently over in Virginia, there's a big stink because apparently there are taxpayer subsidies for Israeli business ventures. And there was a poll taken by the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights and administered by Google Surveys. And what they're basically finding out is that the Virginians are very unhappy that their tax dollars staff a taxpayer-funded state government office to exclusively promote Israeli business projects. And the office is called the Virginia Israel Advisory Board, and it goes all the way back to 1996. So, a little bit of good news, especially for you musicians. Gibson Guitars is going to successfully emerge from bankruptcy. So there's an iconic brand that is, at least for the moment, going to be surviving. And that is a little bit of good news. Meanwhile, Tony Blair is resisting calls to end his multi-million-dollar deal with Saudi Arabia despite the killing of Jamal Khashoggi and the fact that it may have been authorized by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. But, you know, money is money and so forth and so on. Over in Germany, one of their newspapers, Die Welt, has blown the lid off of this Khashoggi situation and revealed that he wasn't just a reporter. That was his cover. He was a high-level operative for the Saudi intelligence service. And of course, as has been pointed out by many people who call into the show, nephew of Adnan Khashoggi, who was this shady Arab arms dealer, was up to his neck in the Iran-Contra scandal. And apparently Khashoggi was also a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And their agenda in Saudi Arabia is to replace the Saudi ruling family with a modern Islamist state. So much for whining in the corporate media about freedom of the press and protection of the rights of journalists. Now, if Khashoggi was in fact a high-level operative in Saudi intelligence at one time, I can't imagine he still was, then he would have been privy to Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11. And the evidence seems to indicate that they were being used as paymasters, as cutouts, so that the U.S. and Israel could keep their hands clean. And somebody may have thought that he might be ready to go public with that in order to damage the royal family here. Over in Great Britain, as you know, the Remainers have been pushing for a second referendum. They're calling it the People's Vote, forgetting, of course, that the people did vote in that first referendum, and they voted to leave the European Union. But the Remainers are out there saying, no, we've got to have a people's vote. We've got to have another one here, and we promise we'll cheat twice as hard on this one as we did last time. But there's an online government petition against this second referendum, and tens of thousands of people have signed this thing in just a few days. They don't want another referendum. They don't want a people's vote. They want the British government to respect the will of the British people and get them the heck out of the European Union. Over in Italy, police have arrested 3 migrant men, 2 Senegalese and 1 Nigerian, for the alleged drugging, rape, and murder of 16-year-old Desiree Mariottini. And there's a fourth suspect who remains at large. And they're accused of having drugged this 16-year-old to the point of unconsciousness and then raped her. And she was abandoned in a known drug den in Rome's San Lorenzo area. And the reason everybody is so concerned is apparently these migrants gave her enough drugs to basically, they knew it would be fatal. Again, if you bring the third world to your country, you're bringing third world problems to your country as well. Okay, apparently up in Sweden, the demographics are definitely shifting, and native Swedes may soon be outnumbered by the migrants pouring in from those open borders. Meanwhile, the populist far right in Sweden is surging because everybody's just sick and tired of this open borders nonsense. Okay, getting into political correctness and how you identify and all this other nonsense. This one really takes the cake. And this is another video that's linked to whatreallyhappened.com. There is this black teenager. She identifies by her first name, Treasure. She's 16 years old, and she insists that she's white, and then trashes black people in this viral video. She's insulting black people, insisting that she's white. And she said at one point in the video, "It made me feel good to put down an African-American person because it helps them stay in their place." And she says this to the camera with a straight face. This is a very, very confused individual. And this is what you get from all this liberal nonsense of you can identify as white or black. Remember, there was that liberal lady who'd been claiming she was black for a long time, and it turned out she was actually white, just did a lot of tanning. So, okay, earlier today there was a story going around the web, went viral, that Paul Craig Roberts' Twitter account had been suspended. Well, there was an account on Twitter in the name of Paul Craig Roberts, and it was suspended, but that's not exactly what happened. Apparently, Paul Craig Roberts does not use social media, but somehow came to understand there was a Twitter account operating in his name, and he requested it be taken down. And he says he never gave anybody permission to operate a Twitter account in his name. And that's something else you have to look at on social media. Fake accounts set up in your name to make you look bad. And it's happened to me a few times. Now, getting on back to that caller who said they were banned again. Over at Facebook, they're trying to discourage people from transitioning to other social media platforms. Now, there's a new social media platform out there called Minds.com. And according to this article, they were trying to help a friend move from Facebook to Minds via the Facebook Messenger app. But it keeps blocking the messages anytime the message includes a Minds.com link. And the only way you can get it through is if you have to fill out a CAPTCHA to show that you really wanted to tell somebody about the site. So it's not exactly a block, but it's definitely an interference. They're trying to discourage people from leaving their platform. Too bad people are leaving the platform here. Now, we mentioned this, I think, well, earlier in the week, but it bears mentioning yet again. Apparently, Twitter is now removing accounts that tweet any material from Alex Jones and InfoWars. And apparently, CNN actually did report on this, the permanent suspension of 18 accounts, and Twitter admitted it to CNN. Yeah, we're sure. And it's our system, and we're a private company. We can do whatever we want, unless they refuse to bake a gay wedding cake, and then all heck is going to break loose here. Over at Microsoft, they're having a lot of bad days. As you know, they had their Windows 10 October 2018 update on the 2nd of this month, and then had to pull it just a couple of days later. The October update is still not re-released, and a lot of people are thinking there's not going to be an update until November. And this article, which is over in ZDNet, is saying, where's the problem and will it happen again? Well, the problem is twofold. First of all, Microsoft, to increase their profitability, is cutting back on staff. They rely on volunteers to help debug the Windows. They'll send out a pre-release version. People will play with it. They'll send it on back saying, this is deleting my files. And apparently, on the October 2nd release, Windows 10 was released with that bug still in it, still deleting files. The other problem is that unlike the earlier operating systems we saw in the golden age of personal computing, modern operating systems have become so complex, even the companies that create them seem to be failing to be able to adequately maintain and manage them. They're too complicated. Part of that complexity, of course, is to hide from you, the end user, a lot of what's going on inside there in terms of surveillance and marketing, tracking, and so forth. But it does make me miss the days when you had, like, the Apple II or the Commodore VIC-20 and or even the Amiga. And then the technology got decadent. All right, over at Cathay Pacific, they have had a hack, and the personal data of up to 9.4 million airline passengers has been revealed, including passenger names, nationalities, date of birth, phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses, 860,000 passport numbers, 245,000 Hong Kong ID card numbers, frequent flyer program membership numbers, customer service remarks, and historical travel data. And some 403 expired credit card numbers were accessed, and 27 active credit card numbers were accessed, but without the CVV numbers, which means the cards are pretty much useless. But it's open season out there, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it. Is this really just organized crime gone virtual? Or is this the total information awareness program run amok? So as you know, we're heading into winter. We're starting to see a lot of snow over the northern hemisphere. And apparently some of these end-season football games are being played in the snow. Now, Britain could be looking at a white Halloween next week. They're predicting temperatures of -5 degrees centigrade and saying it will be the coldest Halloween in 100 years, and they are predicting snow. Apparently, parts of Quebec are going to be hit by 30 centimeters of snow as well. Now, there's an interesting little article here. Apparently, a study on Swiss glaciers shows that the fastest melting was in the 1860s and 1870s, long before the first coal-fired power. So this is proof humans didn't cause the glaciers to melt in Switzerland. It was the natural world, solar radiation, volcanoes, things like that. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about human-caused global warming. And apparently up in Canada, the Canadian Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Catherine McKenna, is trying to justify the nation's new carbon tax by suggesting that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. And she took a lot of ridicule for it. Apparently, a lot of people refer to her as the climate Barbie. But McKenna is not entirely to blame here. She may be taking the lead from here in the United States of America, because here in the U.S., the Environmental Protection Agency has declared carbon dioxide a pollutant in order to support the global warming carbon tax agenda. But of course, carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It is an indispensable component for the chain of life on Earth. If there's no carbon dioxide, there's no plant life. If there's no plant life, there's no animal life. You have to have CO2 for life to continue. Alrighty, apparently in the Daily Signal, there was a story that came on out reporting on the recent report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which basically came on out and said the only way to save the planet, and remember they came out with a 12-year deadline, is to dismantle the entire system of free market enterprise. And so the IPCC is saying the only system of government that offers humanity both dignity and the opportunity to flourish and prosper must be abolished in order to protect the polar bears and stop the ocean from rising and to increase sales for Al Gore's latest climate fiction novel. What they're talking about is using the threat of climate change to sell socialism. And by the way, there's nothing new there, because if you read my article on ClimateGate, down at the bottom there's a whole list of quotes from the luminaries of the climate change cult, if you will, and a lot of them are saying, you know, the world isn't really getting warmer, but we need to scare people into accepting a dramatic change to the world. Planetary socialism. Because it's worked so well everywhere else it's been tried. There's a new report out from the U.S. Geological Survey that has classified 18 of the country's 161 volcanoes at the highest threat ranking. Now, this is the first time they've done this kind of an assessment since 2005, and Hawaii's own Kilauea is at the very top of the list, which is not surprising because it erupted early this year. Technically, it's still in a state of eruption. The others in the top 5 are Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier in Washington State, Alaska's Redoubt volcano, and California's Mount Shasta, which are all beautiful mountains. I mean, I've never been to Alaska, but I've seen Shasta and Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier, and they are beautiful, except when they're erupting here. Over in Iceland, one of their largest volcanoes, Öræfajökull, is showing magma collection inside, and they think it's due for another major eruption. Okay, there's the music. We're going to take a break here for station identification, and when we come on back, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us. Aloha America, welcome back to our show, hour number 3, and for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire, who likes to join us on the third hour on Friday with her unique perspective on the world. And so, Claire, where would you like to begin?
I think I'd like to begin with a concept of perception of Americans' lives, their own lives. And this came from Zero Hedge, which again I commend to people. The writers and contributors are very spot on. And Tyler Durden mentions that we're living in two worlds. One is the world of reality in which we actually live, and the other is life as it is being pictured for us.
Yes.
Peaceful, privileged, progressive, and free, and no.
The Matrix.
You know, absolutely. And the economic inequality seems to be growing, and the agendas and powers are buried beneath layers of what he refers to as Orwellian doublespeak and corporate obfuscation. And freedom is meted out in small, legalistic dosages by militarized police armed to the teeth. I mean, this is where we are.
The obvious difference is, you know, when I was a kid, you could do whatever you want unless the government said you can't. Today, you can't do anything unless the government says you can.
And I mean, I see it, and this is so funny, and I would never, how would I want to say, I would never talk to the people who run security for a friend's condo. But they have made everyone pull over once they're coming into the complex and sign the name and say who they're picking up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is Code Napoleon. Now, Mike and I have been driving this very lovely lady to church for about, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
They always see us come in on Thursdays. They always see us come in on Sundays to collect her. And yet, we're innocent until proven guilty. I kind of don't like that, Mike.
Well, we even suggested to the company that runs security at this condo complex that there should be a sort of like a trusted
category
where we would have a placard that we could show in our windshield and drive on through.
Yeah.
But no, every single time we have to stop, we have to fill out paperwork. And this is like 4 times a week we go through this.
Yeah, we do. And I mean, all I'm trying to do is get one of my choristers to either to rehearsal or to church because she doesn't drive anymore, for heaven's sakes.
Yep.
Talking about surveillance, here's a new one. The DHS wants to let police and emergency vehicles talk to your car. And this is, talk about right out of Orwell. And it may send some shivers down your spine. Apparently, the government spying on all of us has become out of control, and nothing says that more than the latest revelation about DHS's plan to allow first responders to send digital alerts to every vehicle, all in the name of public safety, of course.
Yes.
A couple of days ago in NextGov, they revealed that the DHS is giving the heedful audio alert system, well, I don't know what the heck that is, $1.1 million to let police, firefighters, and paramedics talk to your car via the Waze app. Mike, have you heard of this? The
Waze
this
is
app?
something new. It's basically, as you know, new cars now come on in with connectivity to your smartphone. And so when you get text messages, they will pop up on that screen next to the steering wheel. And we're already in a situation where we're getting emergency messages sent to our cell phones. My concern would be if this Waze app is going to allow the police to have control over your car, because that's an area where I would be very, very concerned.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially after what happened to Michael Hastings.
Oh, yes, definitely. And to me, Mike, this is nothing short of pure insanity and could wind up creating more crashed cars due to distracted driving when someone is receiving a text or a call from DHS.
You're right. Potentially it could.
Yeah.
And when I'm driving, if I'm actually moving, I totally ignore that screen. Not really interested at all.
Yeah.
Because it is a distraction.
But it is nice having calls coming through the speakers when they come in.
Yeah, that's true, because if you're using your cell phone while driving here in Hawaii, it's a $300 fine. And so one of the cool things about our car is that it does connect to my iPhone, and when I get a call coming on in, it plays through the car stereo speakers. There's a little microphone up there by the visor. That part of it is pretty hip.
Yes, definitely.
So anyway.
And more on surveillance, and this comes from Blacklisted News. Again, it's a resource I would urge you to just take a look at, kick the tires, see how it feels. Apparently, Google might soon add its terms of service to the First Amendment. I am not making this up. Oh, we need to do a shout out, don't we?
Well, I was going to wait till the end of the story,
okay.
but
Yeah.
let's just do things Claire's way. And we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. So basically, first of all, Google cannot apply terms of service to the First Amendment. That's in the Constitution. But I understand where the story is going, where Google is trying to basically set itself up as the world's good censor.
Yes, exactly.
Who will protect you happy little mushrooms from harmful content like the truth.
Yes.
And by dangerous behavior like electing somebody for president that the rich people don't like.
Yes. And Google has labeled this leaked article as research. And it's very vague about whether any decisions have already been made or any action has been taken to support this. So, think of all this as a guidepost, like the ghost of Christmas future, showing potential doom ahead. And
absolutely here. Well,
yeah.
Zuckerberg is apparently doing very good. He just bought another 80 acres out there on Kauai to the annoyance of the people on Kauai.
Yes. But to me, Mike, this is a red warning flag that the country has turned or is turning into a high-tech dictatorship.
Yes.
And, I am an American citizen. I have loved what has been good for me in this country and criticized what it isn't. But I think we're getting past the point of no return. And I'm encouraging those who can to get out of this country right now. I don't know where I'd send them.
Yeah.
But,
the whole world is going crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, down in Australia, you're all over Europe. The whole world is going crazy at the same time here.
And unfortunately, that does not augur well for peace in this world. Yeah. And I think my last of my digital woes here is an article that I found in Blacklisted News. It's called Digital Book Burners. And apparently someone named Jamie Fly, who was a former high-ranking Bush neocon, believes you shouldn't have the right to post on social media. And he went on to complain that all you need is an email to set up a Facebook or Twitter account, lamenting the site's accessibility to members of the general public. And he predicted a long struggle on a global scale to fix the problem and pointed that to do so would require constant vigilance, with Jeb Sprague and Max Blumenthal. And apparently, we shouldn't really be surprised by this guy. Neocons do believe it's a point of their ethos that they are of a special breed, a chosen few of an intellectual creme de la creme, and the rest of us are merely bread and circuses spectators on the sidelines as they create our collective history and maybe ruin.
Well, this actually goes back further than that because when the forerunner of the Internet was called the ARPANET because it was developed by the Defense Department's Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Yep.
It was never intended to be made available to ordinary American people. When ARPANET was first set up, it was this impossible to censor peer-to-peer communication system that linked military bases along with various universities that were involved with government contracts. And over time, as students would leave the universities and go into private life, they would set up a link to the ARPANET in their home.
Yeah.
And they would use the email system, they would use Usenet, they would use FTP and all these easy tools, and it was really kind of good. Well, then in the mid-'70s, the U.S. government started getting very nervous because too many of what they considered undesirables had access to this ARPANET. So when it came time to basically renew the contracts for the companies running the ARPANET backbone, the government came on in with the checks and said, here's the check for next year, but there are some new rules. And ordinary Americans are not allowed to access this. This is only just for the chosen ones, for military people, for government people, people in the universities working on these contracts. And every one of these companies running the background handed the checks, the backbone, handed the checks back and said, no thanks, we'll take it over from here. And in hacker lore, that's called the Great Revolt. And that was when the ARPANET became the Internet.
Yes.
And the U.S. government has always been very, very concerned about the American people having access to a system that allowed them to share ideas with large numbers of their fellow Americans. And there have been attempts to control it or censor it or junk it up throughout the decades. Remember the Exxon Amendment?
Yeah.
And apparently we've reached the point where the government is now panicking. And this guy's just out there saying ordinary people shouldn't be allowed to post to social media. The Internet should become, just another content provider and propaganda channel for the government.
And I've got to tell you, folks, as a Christian pacifist activist, when I read codswallop like this from a gentleman who probably never encountered a U.S.-sponsored war, which he absolutely hated, I find his Übermensch mentality just too hard to swallow. And please remember This was a core concept for Germany under Hitler, a German concept for beyond man, Superman, Overman, superhuman, Hyperman, and this was taken from the writings of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yes.
And I completely and rationally reject his concept that there shouldn't be a lot of honest individual voices out there in Netland. And attempting to shut down these honest voices, which what really happened, I believe, is definitely one, means shutting down any and all peaceful, logical resistance to the agenda of the federal government when it is absolutely ham-fistedly, pig-headedly, morally wrong.
Well, it's more important than that.
Yeah.
We're coming to understand that the American people are ruled by a government that relies on lies and propaganda and hoaxes to keep us all controlled.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing the independent media and the internet have succeeded in doing, we've taken that away from the government.
Yep.
They've lost that ability to lie to the American people and be believed. Same thing with corporate media. And they're very angry about that.
Yep.
And they're trying to figure out some way they can justify telling us that we have to surrender our freedom to gather peacefully on the internet, which is another right guaranteed by the First Amendment.
Right.
And express our grievances.
Yeah.
And so it's an attack on the First Amendment. It's an attack on free speech. It's an attempt, once again, to bury the truth and go back to a world ruled by lies.
That's not acceptable to me.
Nope.
And Mike, there's another very disturbing parallel in Fry's thinking, which very much reminds me of the ascent of Hitler in Germany. And that is the following. When he came to power, Hitler controlled the media. He imposed censorship of the media and drastic penalties for criticizing the Nazi regime.
Just like Israel's trying to get now all over the world.
Oh, yeah. And it appears from his evangelical fervor, he is hell-bent on total media control so that government propaganda is all we hear. And he is looking for a means, motive, and an opportunity to completely shut down honest, fact-based discussions of various governmental issues, both foreign and domestic. Now, I would very kindly like to suggest that there are two documents inherent to both the founding and success of this country with which Mr. Fry needs to reacquaint himself. Those are the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And I would also like to caution him that Huxley's 1984 is not a how-to book. It's a cautionary tale.
Actually, that was George Orwell.
George Orwell, I'm sorry,
Okay.
got my off.
Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And another article that I thought was extremely wonderful. It's called The Triumph of Evil in globalresearch.ca. Armament profits take precedent over murder and genocide.
Well, there's been a development in this story. The German media has basically come on out confirming that this Khashoggi was more than just a reporter.
Oh, yeah, he was a spook.
Yeah, he was
Saudi
a spook.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons for the fuss. This wasn't just a simple case of freedom of the press. But again, everybody's exploiting this politically.
Oh, yeah.
The U.S. is trying to use this to get Saudi Arabia to cancel their plan to buy the Russian S-400 system and go back to the THAAD and Patriot, which are more expensive and not quite as good.
Yeah.
But hey, they're made in America,
Yeah.
so that's the way that's going to be. But yeah, I'm still not sure exactly what went down and why.
Yeah.
I still question that they intended to kill him in the consulate because it was too obvious. The fiance was outside there. There's cameras going in and out. They got caught by their own security system. And I think they were going to interrogate him, possibly about Muslim Brotherhood and plans to replace the Saudi royal family with another government. And things got out of control. And I think after that, it was being fanned up, possibly as an attack on Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman himself. But right now, this whole story, so many people have grabbed onto it to twist it and turn it back and forth.
Yeah.
It's probably feeling like a piece of taffy right about now.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. But it's very disturbing that the wars continue, particularly the war in Yemen,
Yes.
which is U.S. enabled. And I talk about this a lot because the mainstream media just won't. And what is happening, what I am seeing and other people are seeing, is there is a lot of demonization of Iran, Syria, Venezuela, North Korea, China, and Russia. It's not that these demonized countries are murdering people in their own embassies and embargoing food and medical supplies to the populations that are being bombed. These crimes are being done by Saudi Arabia, Israel, the U.S., and its NATO vassals. And obviously, the Yemenite, like the Palestinians, don't count. Their slaughter doesn't cause a moral ripple in the West. Well, in some places it does, you know. And I have seen how this event has been used geopolitically for money, for war. And it's really kind of terrible.
It really is. But I think what's going on here, and we've seen this before in history, where a country is edging closer to collapse, and in a last desperate act, it simply starts invading and conquering all of its neighbors to steal their wealth. And in this case, we're talking about not just the oil wealth, but other natural resources. Certainly, one of the agendas for the United States is to try and drag the world back under the hegemonic domination of the U.S. dollar. And they're definitely running into resistance on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But this is going to end badly. At some point, I think all of these little tension areas, they're all going to flare up at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that 50 years from now, history books are going to say we were already in World War III at this point. But I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better.
Yeah.
I mean, they're now talking about war with China within the next 15 years.
Help.
Yes, which is going to be bad for the landscaping here in Hawaii.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely. And, you know, it's sad, but it seems to be a flaw of human nature that money trumps justice so much of the time.
Well, because money is addictive.
Yeah.
And, we've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And before we go back to Lady Claire's, a breaking story. Apparently, over in Great Britain, somebody tried to smash through the glass case protecting the Magna Carta. And it does look like they succeeded in making some holes. So I think maybe something a little stronger needs to be put into that frame.
Yes, absolutely.
Like bulletproof glass, Kevlar, something like that.
Yes, definitely.
Anyway, what's your next story?
Well, apparently, John Bolton is behind a whisper campaign to oust Secdef Mattis. And apparently, he has worked on this with his deputy, Mira Ricardel, and trying to cut Mattis out of very key presidential briefings due to the view that Mattis wasn't ideologically aligned with the administration. Now, this comes out of Foreign Policy blog.
What's really going on is that Mattis isn't ideologically aligned with Bolton.
Right, yeah. But now I have had my differences of opinion with this gentleman.
Which gentleman? Mattis?
Mattis, yes. But I do know that the people who served under him worshipped him and thought he was the greatest leader ever. So I'm really hoping that this ousting does not happen, because right now he may be the only one in the cabinet who may be pushing back against all the wars for which Bolton is advocating.
Well, but apparently this is the source of all these rumors that Mattis is leaving.
Yeah.
Trying to put pressure on him.
Yeah. And I think it's unfortunate, and it would be unwise for President Trump to let him go.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And but it looks like Mattis is not going to resign.
They're going to have to throw him out the door under the proverbial bus,
Well,
I guess.
Bolton is probably going to try and find some way to do that. But what it reveals is that the White House internally
is fractured.
Yeah. And Bolton is going back to being Bolton. every time he's in a position like that, he likes to play dirty.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to just basically crush anybody who doesn't want to go along with what he thinks the United States should be doing militarily.
Yeah. I have a question about Bolton. Did he ever actually serve in combat?
I have no idea.
I would be willing to bet that he didn't. You know.
Well, that'll be worth looking at his bio.
Yes.
But by and large, the most war hawk-like politicians are the ones who did not have to serve themselves.
Donald Trump didn't serve, did he? He had a medical
he had some
discharge.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And apparently, and this is coming from zerohedge.com, which is an outlet that both Mike and I link to, delinquency in loans is at a crisis level with the student loan bubble about ready to pop. And there has been an explosion in federal student loans. And with the cost of college soaring, the result...
Explosion in growth.
Yes, explosion in growth.
Explosion in growth. Well, this mess was actually created, and when it was first cranking up, we sounded a warning that these kids were being lured into college, and college costs were skyrocketing way above the rate of inflation. Financial aid was being cut off.
Yep.
And education was being turned into a racket to simply plunge these kids onto the debt hook of a student loan as hard as possible.
Well, now...
And these kids
go
went
ahead.
into this because the colleges were promising when you get on out, there's going to be a high-paying job. You'll be able to pay these loans off in just a few years. And, of course, that never happened.
Yeah.
And they're now debt slaves.
And apparently these student loans have run up to almost 157% in cumulative growth over the last 10 years. Now, auto debt has grown by 52%, while mortgage and credit card debt fell by 1%.
That's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, people are paying off their mortgages, they're paying off their credit cards, which is a very good thing to do. Auto debt has to go up because the cars are not built to last all that long.
No.
And the price of the cars, they're really going up. I mean, when Claire and I were shopping, I was looking at some of the cars that were on that lot, and we're talking pre-owned cars, and the prices on them was more than the house that my family lived in West Covina, California.
Yep.
I mean, that's how out of control it is here.
Yeah. We need to go over to science and health for a moment. Or do we have a moment, and should I hold this
Well,
for the
we
next
have
segment?
about 40 seconds, so you can sort of tease the story.
Apparently, there has been a viral outbreak of hand, foot, and mouth disease on college campuses. And the health officials are saying they can't explain it because usually this happens with kids, little kids. But there are several states that have been dealing with this outbreak. And I have to wonder, Mike, if this can be tied to illegal, undocumented people coming into the country.
We know that these refugees and illegal immigrants are coming in with all kinds of contagious diseases.
Yep.
And as far as the Democrats are concerned, small price to pay for more Democratic voters. We know that scabies has come on back here.
Yep.
HIV, one case of bubonic plague.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially with that crisis in the Congo with Ebola, is one of those patients or those infected in this barbarian horde.
Yeah.
We'll be back after these few commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And as a matter of fact, we have a caller sitting on the line right now. So let's go to Mark in Georgia. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there?
Hello.
There you are. Okay, Mark, we hear you now. What's on your mind?
Yeah, you were asking if Bolton had ever served you. Were you talking about John Bolton?
Yes, sir. We were.
All right. He did serve in the military.
Okay.
However, he served 4 years in the Army National Guard, and then he served 2 years in the United States Army Reserve. But he never left. He never left the States, and he never saw any combat.
Okay.
Thank you. That had been my suspicion.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I don't know. What, is he just reliving the glory days vicariously? You know, God, I couldn't get into combat, so I'm going to send our kids into combat, and I'll just get the thrill that way secondhand.
That's kind of morally ugly.
Yes. Well,
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mark? Okay, well, I guess Mark hung up, so thank you very much for that phone call. Claire, your next story.
Well, yesterday, I think the U.S. got a bit more than just a warning. Yesterday, during the opening ceremony of the Xiangshan Forum, Wei Feng, China's Minister of Defense and a state council member, made the statement that China will take decisive steps, regardless of the cost, to preserve its territorial integrity and repel attempts to separate Taiwan from the country. Now, Mike, I don't think he was talking about France. No. I don't think he was talking about Monaco. He was talking right at the leadership of the United States of America.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, tensions between China and the U.S. are very high, between the tariff wars, selling of weapons to Taiwan, the continuing argument, if you will, over those islands in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
And that's why we have experts saying that there's probably going to be a war between the U.S. and China within the next 15 years. And we have another caller on the line.
Good.
So let's go to Brandon in San Francisco. And Brandon, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Brandon, are you there?
Gotcha. Yes. Can you hear me, Mike?
I hear you now.
We're good.
Calling because Scott Israel, the infamous sheriff in Broward County's name has come up again in relation to this MAGA bomber. Now, if you recall, I mentioned him a couple months ago in relation to that Alaska Army vet that flew to Fort Lauderdale and shot up the airport. So Scott Israel, sheriff, was involved in that press conference, and then, of course, the Parkland school shooting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we have a third. So this is just getting a little too cute, in my opinion. He's a staunch Democrat, as you may recall.
Yes.
And it's just a little too cute, in my opinion. I mean, what are the odds? This guy just keeps resurfacing in these high-profile cases.
Yeah. I think you are right that it is not coincidence and something else may be going on here.
I mean, was this pipe bomb suspect even arrested in Broward County? Is it within his jurisdiction?
I do not think so. That was another thing that stood out. I also heard that guy, Israel, was being let go, but he still holds his position as a sheriff. So that's another thing that is a little bit off.
Yeah, there was a big upset within the sheriff's department where a lot of the deputy sheriffs just don't want to work with him anymore, and they were trying to force him out, but he was able to hang on.
Yeah, I thought it was like a vote of no confidence.
Yes.
One last thing. We all know guys put stickers on their vans and things, but like here in San Francisco, I guarantee you, if you put a Trump sticker on your car, you're going to come back to a broken window. Or I believe they just set a pickup truck on fire a couple weeks ago of a Trump supporter. Now, this guy went to exorbitant lengths. I know you're into graphic art and computer science. He went to some lengths to generate an image that could be replicated on a printer with an adhesive back. Those are not real stickers. That is a computer graphics generated image that's on a high, I believe they call it a wrap, where they can wrap the vehicle.
Yes.
And it's impeccably done. If you look at the resolution of the photographs of the van, I mean, that was a professional wrap job on those windows.
Yeah, it really was. And if you go over to this guy's Twitter account and you read his posts and you look at his spelling and grammar, this guy does not come across as being very smart at all.
Right. Well, yeah, he's obviously
low-hanging fruit. I mean, he's a perfect cutout. Like, if he's living in his van
Yeah.
and he doesn't have a lot of family connections,
Mm-hmm.
he would be he's a poster child for a, lone gunman or whatnot, lone shooter
Yeah.
profile.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm telling you, this just stinks to high heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he's only been a registered Republican since 2016, and he's all in on Trump. That's a little too cute as well.
Yeah. No, I think this guy was recruited and turned into an asset. I mean, he'd gone through a bankruptcy. He had no money. He's an ideal candidate. And again, going back over to Twitter, the people he was following were all liberals. He didn't even follow Donald Trump on his Twitter account. And a lot of the people following this guy on his Twitter account are clearly Democratic. They've got the blue wave emoji on their account. So, yeah, this guy was just manufactured from the ground up.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. It reminds me when the supposed chemical attacks in Syria, as Assad's winning and he's about to close it down, a chemical attack occurs for no good reason that would actually work against his cause. So this guy, if he were a true Trump supporter, we're all patiently waiting for indictments. Why would he go ahead and throw a monkey wrench that would help the Democrats? It's so clear. Anyway, you guys have a great weekend. Thanks again.
You too.
Bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to let you go here. It's obvious this is another one of these hoaxes that the corporate media and the politicians put on out here in their hope that we're all a bunch of clueless idiots who are not really paying attention. But again, getting on back to the van, and as we said at the top of the show, under Florida law, you are not allowed to have stickers on the glass windows of your vehicle. And had this vehicle been for real, and by the way, looking at the photos of it, I can't even see any license plates on it. But had this been for real, this guy would have been stopped every quarter of a mile by a traffic cop and written up with a huge citation because you're not allowed to do that. Either the back windows or the side windows. It's against Florida law. And this last caller made a really good point. In a heavily Democratic area of the country, if you have a Trump sticker on your vehicle, it's going to get vandalized. And this van looks almost showroom new.
Yeah, it did. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, apparently, at least 10 missiles launched from Gaza and several were intercepted. This happened today, Israel time. And Mike, do you think this is going to push up the timetable for an attack against Gaza?
Absolutely. We know that Israel has got a huge number of tanks parked on the border of Gaza. We know that the Israeli leadership has been talking about this for quite some time, about a military solution. The shootings at the Great March of Return have made Israel look very, very bad to the world, and they just want it to all go away, even if they have to deal with the aftermath of simply rolling on into Gaza and just crushing the place. So I think that's definitely happening. And if I were to take a guess, I would imagine it's likely to happen on the same day that the barbarian horde hits our southern border. Because that's going to be dominating the
distraction.
news cycle.
I hear you. I'd like to move over again to science. Happy water. Is it time we started adding lithium to the water supply?
Oh, boy.
And apparently there is a gentleman, a Professor Nasir Ghaemi, and he claims that the practice would be beneficial for the American population. And he makes the argument high lithium areas have suicide rates 50 to 60% lower than those of low lithium areas.
Well, there is no question that lithium is a combative. For that matter, so was fluoride when they were putting that in the water. But if I'm going to be on lithium, I want that to be my choice, not some bureaucrat.
Absolutely. And you've got some terrible side effects with this drug. The article that I was looking at goes on to state lithium side effects.
Why don't you stand up for just a second? I'm going to move you closer to the table so you're not losing.
All right. Okay. I'm fine.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, folks. We're there.
All right.
The side effects are severity. There are you can get very fuzzy-headed. You can get very not being able to think clearly, confusion,
Here's
poor
the list of
memory, or
symptoms.
yeah.
Okay, fainting, fast or slow heartbeat,
Yeah.
frequent urination, increased thirst, irregular pulse, stiffness of the arms or legs.
And for me, that means thank you, Dr. Gamey, but no. Why don't they perform the tests on his colleagues?
Well, again, this gets back to the idea. If I'm going to have lithium or fluoride, or for that matter, anything else, it's got to be my choice.
Yeah.
We're living with a government right now that's out there saying, you will take these vaccines, you're going to eat GMO, you have no more choice, and even if it's making you sick, well, we're making too much money to stop now.
Yeah.
All right, we've got another caller on the line here, and we're going to go to Mark in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Before I start, I just want to say I was reading this week about in Sandra Cabot's Kindle book about antiviral qualities of vegetables and stuff like sweet potatoes and vitamin C related citrus and stuff. And I just wanted to include that, as a part of possibly the Care with the Seventh-day Adventist that you had recommended. Yeah. But the reason why I really called was this past weekend, Chappaquiddick was on Netflix, and I watched it, and that reminded me about this whole anchor baby law that I've read that was originally bandied about by Ted Kennedy, and that in '65 he spearheaded the whole effort to create this law, modify the amendments to get what we call today anchor babies in. I was thinking, maybe it's going to come with SCOTUS, and I was triggered too by you just said you're a Christian activist. I'm saying the two big things now are Roe v. Wade, which personally I really don't care, but if you are going to, like an insurance car, if you're going to speed, maybe you should pay more, or if you get in accidents, maybe you should pay more.
Yes.
But I'm thinking with you and Mike on the phone, have you ever discussed what's more important? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. This anchor baby thing and this law, which I think you guys were teenagers, so I can't really bust on you guys for not being there.
Thank you.
Right? In 1965? So you know where I'm going with this. I don't mean to embarrass you or get you in trouble with your congregation if I make you take a stand on Roe v. Wade. As opposed to, I personally would rather see, I'm willing to put the anchor baby in front of Roe v. Wade.
I think I would weigh them equally.
I would agree with that. It's comparing apples and oranges. The anchor baby law definitely opened the floodgates for the immigrants to start coming on into this country.
Yeah.
And it is being exploited. And as one of our callers mentioned earlier in the show, out in Los Angeles, they have had more anchor babies born there this year than the total new birth rate in our 14 smallest states put together. And for the vast majority of those anchor baby births, the taxpayers are having to pick up the cost of the maternity services. Because these immigrants just don't have it. They don't have insurance. They don't have any money. It's just bleeding the country dry, all in exchange for Democratic votes. And this New World Order, we're going to blend everybody together. Now, as far as abortion is concerned, it is a very complex issue. And I am willing to concede there are circumstances in which abortion is necessary and justified if the mother's life is being threatened, if she's dealing with rape or incest, or if the sonogram is showing that the baby is hideously deformed.
Yeah.
Maybe. Where I have a problem is women who are behaving irresponsibly. They're not taking care of birth control because they don't want to admit to themselves they're that kind of girl, and they go on out and they have fun and they prove they are that kind of girl. They get pregnant and they're using abortion as retroactive birth control. That I do have a problem with. Plus we have the abuses of Planned Parenthood. So I think, abortion on demand, I really don't agree with that. because I don't think anybody has the right to say when the fetus is a living creature capable of feeling pain or not.
And Mike, I would like to jump into this. I am pro-life, but that's for me. I would never, had I had been pregnant, would have terminated it. But if there's a young woman crying on my doorstep and thinks that she is late, I would immediately take her to a counseling session. But the thing that I would want her to understand is, does she know all of her options, including adoption, which I think is cool. I have seen intentional families adopt crack babies, and the kids 7, 8, and 9, they're all right.
Yeah.
So adoption is a big thing that I think we as a nation need to push.
And I'm glad, because I am adopted. And recently I wanted to call back sometime and talk about Ancestry, which within 2 days found a second-generation relative who was on Ancestry for 7 years. And said, oh, my God,
Mark,
never
stay on the
seen
line.
a
Mark,
second
stay on the
generation.
line. I got to put you on hold. Stay on the line. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Mark in New York. And Mark, you were saying Ancestry found a relative of yours. Are you talking about the Ancestry website or the DNA test kit?
Yes, the DNA test. Yes, I took the DNA test, the saliva test, and it took them a few months. But when the results came in, boom, they nailed it. And they gave me 2 circles. Like, I thought I was, from one side of Europe, but I'm from the complete other side of Europe. And the circles that they had in the north of Europe match one side of the family, and then the other ones that I don't really know much about the other side of the family. I know where they come. Unfortunately, I found out I have a half-sister named after a Disney character, but I'll get over that someday. But overall,
just a word of caution.
I heard you.
A word of caution here. Those consumer-level DNA test kits have a reputation for not being entirely accurate. In fact, there was this news story that came out a while back where DNA samples were taken from a pair of identical twins and sent in to one of these DNA testing companies, and they got back 2 completely different results. So they've been described as genetic astrology. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. We've got time enough for one more phone call, and that's Jim in Michigan. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. If you look at fluoride, and hydrofluorosilicic acid, and then you look at calcium fluoride, which comes in nature, the calcium in the natural fluoride, it cancels out the fluoride, the negativity of it, okay? We also have what is called lithium orotate, which is the natural lithium, which really helps so many people with PTSD and, every other kind of mental illness, whereas the lithium that they want to put in the water is the bad stuff, just like the bad fluoride. So there is good lithium out there. It's lithium orotate, and it's been worked wonders on our veterans with post-traumatic stress syndrome and also other people. So, all right. Anyways, love you guys.
Well, I'm sure the reason that they're putting the bad lithium in the water and the bad fluoride is it's the cheapest available. That's how Flint, Michigan got into trouble with their water supply. But again, if I'm going to be on fluoride or lithium or vaccines, I want it to be my choice, not some government bureaucrat dictating my health care to me. Because remember, this is the same government that botched up the breakup of Ma Bell and caused so much confusion. All right, so we're going to close the phone lines here. We're coming up on the end of the show. And again, how many more times are you going to have to be lied to before you're willing to stand up and scream, I refuse to be lied to anymore? And I would like to repeat that suggestion that was made by one of our earlier callers, and that is to call your congressional representatives and your local media and just say, you're not buying this latest story about this pipe bomber, and post it to social media, it'll be taken down.
Yeah.
But if enough people are making enough noise, we can break their confidence. And I think that's already starting to happen, or the FBI director would not have come on out with that announcement saying, well, even though the bombs all look like TV props, trust me, they're real. They're very, very real. Okay, there's the music. Time for Claire and I to get on out of here and get something done with the rest of the afternoon. So stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. And take everything you learn here, share it with everyone that you know. Please tell all your GOP friends they must get out and vote. It is that serious. This election is probably even more important to the country than 2016 was.
Yes.
So we'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.